That's good.
7:01. Okay, if you'd all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Rich, lead us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
When I was little, I thought they were saying for Rich it stands. No one, okay. Okay, help me, Denise.
So at this point, you will choose the ensuing mayor for the following year. Commission policy is that the current vice mayor would move up to that position. And then for the vice mayor for the ensuing year, it would be the person who got the most votes in the 2023 election, which would have been Kathy. You can deviate from that policy if you'd like, but that is the policy, and you just need to make that motion and then second, and then we will do a little switch, and that person will take over the meeting. Then we'll do another one, and we'll make another kind of movie around.
Okay.
Okay?
I move that we approve Commissioner Rich Stennett as our next mayor.
Got a motion and a
I
second.
second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm not opposed. No nay from me. So, okay. There you go. Now, you just want us to flip-flop? Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll go clear to the bottom.
You get to sit next to the
I better
principal.
do this when you actually vote on
To
it.
the principal. Next to the principal.
I thought you would. No, yeah, until I'm actually, yes. Okay, so I probably shouldn't do this until I'm actually voting.
Oh,
Right?
so Rich will do that. We'll do the next one.
Okay.
I don't mind standing here holding all this stuff.
I would call for a motion to install our vice mayor for the upcoming year.
So moved.
We have a motion for Kathy Valentine to be our.
Yes.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Just got that one adjusted.
Yeah. I think you need to too.
I don't.
I brought two
That's
pens.
the worst part.
All righty.
Rich, have your walker.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Rod. Big shoes to fill, so. All righty. The next item on our agenda this evening is to consider our consent agenda. So having had an opportunity to review the items on the consent agenda, is there any discussion? I would entertain a motion, please.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Having a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion carries. Next item this evening is the presentation of the Main Street Survey. Jan?
Great. I am Jen Lehman. I am our Convention and Visitors Bureau and Main Street Coordinator here for Newton. And this year we were fortunate to have Main Street America and Kansas Main Street come for a transformational strategy visit. And so I'm going to present a little bit on that. As part of that visit, we talked about the accreditation standards. So as a Main Street community, every year we have to go through the accreditation process to become accredited again. These are the things that they look for in that accreditation. So we have to show that we are doing all of these things every single time we file for accreditation. But this visit was focused mainly on the strategy-driven programming. So that's what we really looked at, and how do our strategies align with the goals that we want to achieve, and based off of all of the things they presented to us, what would be the best strategies for our community, because they're different for every community. So part of that is the economic development journey. So this is a little small, but it starts with the community vision there at the top. And so this year we did a survey that they helped us do, and we had almost 900 people in the community take it, which is actually a really good response rate for a survey. They were pleased, very pleased with that. They were actually very surprised with how many we had. And then it moves into market understanding. So they provided us with Placer AI data, Esri data, and just some different market data from other communities as well that we can kind of compare and look at what are we doing here. Then it moves into those transformation strategies, which they helped us develop 3, which we adopted at our last Main Street board meeting. And then that work plan implementation. So that will be the goals based off of those transformational strategies that we will work to adopt and then work towards. The measurable outcomes, so showing, are we meeting our goals and are they measurable? And then going back into that community vision. So we always want to take this program back to what are the community needs and wants for our Main Street, not just what is one person's wants and needs for our Main Street. What is that broader overview? So they showed us some Placer AI data. This is data of where people are located from those visitors. And one thing that we found is there's almost 200,000 unique visitors just to Newton's downtown in the course of a year. So when you think about all the people who are coming here, that's quite a few. There's about 1.7 million visits annually. And again, that's just our downtown. That is not the whole community of Newton. So there's about 10 visitors for every 1 resident in our community. And people come down about 9 times on average. So there's people who are coming down a lot more often and people who just come once. But they spend about 95 minutes, an hour and a half in our downtown, which shows that they're going typically to multiple places. So they are coming and spending time. They're not just driving through on K15 and leaving. We have a fairly steady visit rate throughout the year. There is a dip in January, but I don't think that's surprising when you think it's cold weather just after Christmas. People have spent a lot of money, and it was just a slight dip. And one nice thing is our visits are back to where they were pre-pandemic. So we had a big dip during that time, and we have come back from that. So that's good to see. People were asked to write in what they like and don't like about our downtown. So these were not prompted responses. These were what people typed in. The green are the things that people liked. And these were great things for us to see. So people are coming to shop. They find it clean, quaint, friendly. Those were all great words for us to see. I don't think it's surprising to anyone that the biggest negative was train in our downtown. While that isn't something that we can change, it is good for us to note. Parking and empty were the other 2 that really resonated. But with parking, is it a perception or a reality? Because when we looked at how many parking spaces, both public and private, we have about 2,000 parking spaces in our downtown for people to park in. Which is a lot, and about 1,500 of those are public parking spots. So there's a lot of parking in our downtown that people probably aren't thinking about.
And the bigger the word,
Right.
the more
Yes, the bigger the word.
I'd like to move train over to the green side.
Train is a good thing too, it is.
Can be.
They were also asked, what do you see as your top 3 issues in downtown? Now with this question, they could only choose 3 things, and there was a very long list of things for them to choose from, so they could not choose everything. This is a little hard to see, but lack of businesses suited to what they like was by far number 1, vacant storefronts, and not enough businesses consistently open. And so working to fill some of those vacant spots, we have about an 18% storefront vacancy rate right now in our downtown. So Zach and I have been working to put together a list of all of the open spaces downtown and are looking to see how can we help fill those, where can we look at people to come to our downtown so that it can be a place that's congregated for shopping. And then what would people like to see in our downtown? And again, they could only choose 3 out of this whole long list. So even if they wanted to see all of these things in our downtown, they had to prioritize in this survey for that. Casual and family restaurant was number 1 by quite a bit. I think it's also good to note we have 8 restaurants in our downtown, so we do have eating in our downtown. Brewery, winery, and distillery was number 2, but with the recent election and the beer freedom that passed, that now makes it more accessible for that to come into our downtown. And then family entertainment. So think arcade, axe throwing, pottery making, different things like that. So indoor activities in our downtown. I thought it interesting that in the top 3, shopping did not make it in there. So those are kind of the things that they thought about. The top 3 reasons to visit downtown, shopping for fun was number 1, which is good to see because I think sometimes we hear there's no shopping downtown in Newton, but that's what people are coming to our downtown for. Events and festivals. We have a lot of great events from Taste of Newton to the Parade of Lights that just happened that people are coming downtown for. And then accessing public services. So while our library and city hall technically are not in our downtown district, I think a lot of people think of them because they're right on the edge. Our county courthouse is down here. So this is kind of a hub for people to come and do some of those things. This I wanted to share with you. One of the questions was, what is your emotional connection to Newton? And they spread it out by length of time that you've been a part of the community. So we were hovering kind of right around those mid-60s for most of them. But if you've been here for more than 10 years, it jumps pretty considerably. But I think this was good for us to see that there are people who are feeling connected to our community, and we want to see that. Because then that also translates to them coming and shopping in our community, supporting our schools, supporting our businesses, and doing those things.
That chart makes no sense. I said that chart makes no sense.
Is this information available?
Yeah, they gave us all of this.
Website? I mean, where is it available?
It's not available online. It's something that we have in our office that we have.
We have, some of it was presented to the last Main Street board in fuller form, and that is on iCompass already in that packet. So you
And that
can go
does have
through,
the full survey results in there.
you can go through page after page after page of those survey
One
results.
question. You were here for a period of time and you answered for your period of time.
See why?
Yeah.
So one of the questions was, how long have you lived in Newton? And then another question was, what's your emotional connectedness? And they separated it out for us.
That's interesting.
Some feedback that came for the city in general. So this came through, not only did we do the survey, and actually there was a lot of typed responses, which I think is a good thing because people were wanting to share and they weren't just clicking the answers. We have pages of typed responses. It has actually taken a very long time to go through all the information just because there was so much. But then we also did a day and a half of meetings around this, where we met with business owners, property owners. There were city commissioners present for one of those. So we had a lot of feedback that was given, and these were some that were more city-oriented. Parking, of course, came up very often, but as I said, is that a perception or a reality issue? Just parking downtown the other day, I parked in a back parking lot and then entered through the alley. And I was like, oh, this is way closer sometimes than if you park up front. But I don't think people think about those parking lots that are back behind, and then you can enter through the alley. I think when that front door is out of sight, you think, oh, I'm parking so far away, even though in reality, you're not parking that far away. An adoption of up-to-date existing building codes came up quite often, but I do want to give credit to Suzanne and her team. They have been working very hard to adopt those. So it is coming. And they are doing training on that so that we can have that here hopefully very soon. Unsafe for bikers and pedestrians came up quite a bit, especially with a middle school downtown and kids walking around. If you've ever been down there at around 3:15-ish, there's a lot of walkers and bikers. People sometimes use those parking lanes as turn lanes, which takes out that visual of the crosswalk sometimes. Confusion on upkeep of plants, weeds, trees, sidewalk, all of that. Is it city responsibility? Is it business owner responsibility? And to help with that, we've actually been creating a small business guide that lists who are those responsibilities? So there's a whole page in there designated of who to contact if there's a problem and whose responsibility is it, so that businesses can know who that is and can kind of help clear up some of that confusion. There was also an ask for a downtown reinvestment tax to put more money into our downtown and continue to develop that. And continued support from the city with incentives for our downtown businesses and property owners. The facade improvement grant went over really well, and we even have a waiting list for it. So there's good things there. The 3 transformational strategies that they helped us come up with are to strengthen our community engagement and pride, increase downtown vibrancy and foot traffic, and expand support for business and property owners. Now, these are very broad. There is a lot that can fall under these and a lot that will fall under these. These are not something that we're going to achieve in a year's time and be at a place where we're like, yes, we've got this really well. These are strategies that will probably take us 3 to 5 years to get to a point of we have really excelled in these areas, but we can start developing all of those sub-goals, which those sub-goals fall into 4 categories. So as a Main Street program, there is design, economic vitality, promotions, and organization. And those are the 4 pillars that really Main Street falls under and works on those 4 things very heavily. And so next week, our first design and economic vitality committees will be meeting to start setting some of those goals and dreaming up what do they want to see for our downtown. Our promotions committee has already been meeting with the chamber doing those, and then our organization committee will actually be our Main Street board, because a lot of that is the partnerships and leadership development, which our board is already doing. And so until we get to a point that we need more in that, we're going to keep that with our Main Street board, but we'll be working to set goals under that based off of the survey, the data we received, and then also the needs of our community. And 2 other things that I do want to share with you also is our small business support guide, which I mentioned. We have worked hard to develop that, and that came out of a Main Street course that we took earlier this year and had to develop that. And so it is actually being circulated to department heads for them to review before we send it out and make sure we haven't missed anything. And then in January, we are going to take it to our first Connect Downtown event so that all of our downtown business owners can look at it as well and say, what would have been helpful for them to know as a business being started here? Because while we can develop it, I have not started a business in Newton. And so knowing what are those things that are important to them, we'd like to get their feedback on. And this Connect Downtown will be a time where we can get all of the downtown business owners together. One thing that came out in the meeting is some of our downtown business owners don't know each other. There was a lot of introductions that we were doing that day. And so how do we get them to know each other, to work together, to collaborate on things so that we can be using our resources as effectively as possible? And so this will be the time that we can do that, and hopefully a start of offering them the resources that Main Street does, and then also dreaming up how we can collaborate and work together.
Nice presentation.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And hopefully you guys all got calendars when you came in. The Convention and Visitors Bureau calendar came out, so those are out for distribution.
Yep. All righty. The next item on our agenda this evening is to consider an ordinance for the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds, Series 2024 for CD Customs Enterprises. Chris and Sarah will do
Yeah, and I'll just reintroduce Sarah Steele. She'll take the podium. Sarah with Gilmore and Bell. Gilmore and Bell has a long relationship with the city of Newton, serving as bond counsel. Sarah's great for myself and staff. We have questions, we call Sarah, and she's an expert in the field. She's awesome.
Along with Garth Herman.
And Garth.
Yes. Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this issue. This is the final action to be taken by the City Commission authorizing the issuance of industrial revenue bonds. You might recall that in late February of this year, the CD Custom folks came to the city, held a public hearing, had a resolution of intent adopted, and then they went really fast on construction. So they are ready to close. They anticipate, if they're not done yet, being complete very, very soon. And for purposes of a property tax exemption, it's very important, if you want a property tax exemption in the next calendar year, to make sure you issue the bonds in the year prior. And then the property tax exemption will start January 1, 2025. In addition to that, you may recall that they had a sales tax exemption on all of the materials that they purchased in construction, which obviously was a great benefit as well to them. So the city is being asked to authorize not to exceed $5.5 million, which was in the initial resolution of intent. And as always, this is an obligation strictly of the company. In no way is the city responsible for any of the debt on the bond issue, and it certainly won't count toward your credit or impact you in any way financially. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I guess we don't have any.
So we just need a motion to approve the
Ordinance.
With an ordinance number,
number.
which would be 5159-24.
I would move we approve ordinance 5159.
All right, we have a motion to approve ordinance 5159-24. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Next item this evening is to consider a resolution for the Carriage Factory Gallery to serve complimentary alcoholic beverages or cereal malt beverages at events promoting the arts. Chris.
And we've done this exercise before. This is a resolution before you upon the request of Carriage Factory. Per state statute, they can serve complimentary alcoholic beverages at their events that promote the arts. The first step is a local approving of that action, and that's included in your resolution. We did this last year. It outlines their events. They would then provide that to the state. I would stand for any questions.
Resolution number?
G-1350.
I move we approve G-1350.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next item this evening is to consider the Water and Sewer Master Plan Agreement. Suzanne?
Yes, Commissioners. It has been about every 5 to 15 years, it varies depending on development, that the city takes a comprehensive look at our water and wastewater utilities and infrastructure. As we're looking at the development patterns, we're also looking at the capacity of our existing systems, major maintenance needs, and the anticipated upcoming state and federal environmental regulation changes. The results of a master plan document also provide us with guidance and merit when we're applying for state and federal grants. We get a lot of those low interest loans through the state, and if we state in our applications that, hey, this was something that was in our master plan, it has more credence with the state. And so we try and list out projects that are needed for our local system, and that helps us gain monies as we move forward. And it's not just the low interest loans, but when we're applying for grants and things too. The city has used professional engineering consultants for environmental engineering assistance way before I started here. It's been at least 35 plus years. They performed the master plan that we had done in 2005 and then did an update for us in 2017. They also handle what we call our water model. It's software that has our water system in it, and we have not updated that for many years. In fact, it's very, very needed at this point. It's been about 8 years, because if we have some, say a business that's coming into a location where we do not have water, and we're going to be extending, we ask for them to go ahead and run the model to see, are we going to need to extend lines? Are we going to have enough capacity? That kind of thing. And if you're not using it all the time, it's going to be too difficult for us to pick up. And so we're asking them to update it. We'll provide them with the mapping and all of that. But that's included in this agreement for this master plan, is the water model update. I provided you with a copy of the agreement, and the cost for this would be paid out of our water and our sewer utility funds out of the 2024 operating budget. Do you have any questions?
What will this do to, will this increase people's water bill, I mean, at some point?
No,
Okay.
no, it's not looking at rates. It's going to lay out where we maybe need to do some major maintenance projects. What we talked about in our work session about a project where we had to upsize a line because of capacity. It's going to be looking at areas where we've been having individuals ask us, hey, we'd like to develop land, say, south of the mall on 36th Street, but right now, if we were going to extend services down there, we would really need to be looking at how we were going to handle that from a wastewater standpoint. And so this starts to look at, as we branch outside of our existing boundaries, where are we going to need to go? What do those sewer basins look like? How are we going to need to loop water lines, that kind of thing.
It's probably good to update the model since we have the tower changes.
Yes, that too. I mean, we have a lot of lines that haven't been updated in the model, and so that definitely needs to be done. But that's included with this.
I motion that we approve the water and sewer master plan update.
Awesome. We have a motion to,
I second it.
all righty. We have a motion to second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item this evening is to consider updating the fiscal and budgetary policy for minimum fund balance requirements for enterprise funds. You get the fun one.
As you know, a reserve is a budget and policy tool that describes the cash resources that are available that's not in the budget but are outside the budget. And put another way, the reserve is an insurance against unplanned, unavoidable costs or revenue losses that can't be absorbed within the regular budget. Reserves help us make sure that we can respond quickly and decisively to extreme events. Also support public services during revenue declines. If it rained a whole season and we didn't get good water, anybody using their water, we might need to go into our reserves somehow. When we did have the May 19th storm event, it took us almost 3 months before we got any money from the insurance company. So we do need money to cover some of the things if an extreme event would happen. Our present policy defines a reserve balance needed for enterprise funds to be 5%, and that's for all enterprise funds. It's golf course, it's the airport, and it's 3 utilities. I don't feel like this isn't a reasonable reserve for the 3 utility funds. Best practices for large cities are at the 6 to 7 month budgeted expenditures amount. And I feel like for the size of Newton, a 3-month reserve would be a viable and sustainable amount. I was asked if I had checked with little cities around here, because I did check with Topeka and Olathe, and they were all at the 6-month. So I did some checking, and a lot of the smaller cities don't have policies on their websites, but I did find 2 around here real close, and they are at the 15 to 25%, which is kind of where we're wanting to go, is the 25%. I do not suggest that we raise the airport or the golf course or the Meridian Center. Those can stay at the 5%. If you look at the charts I have up here, you'll see the red line is our current reserve, which is way down there at the bottom. And it's, for the sanitation, it's like just $121,000. That isn't even what we pay monthly for bills. The reserve I want to have is the green. You're fine. You can see the sanitation fund is already there. We're well over, and that's when we get to places like that, we can look at our rates have been, what are being charged by people is going up. But we are still well in a good point, so we're not going to raise our rates. So that's something that we can kind of look at. When you look at the water fund, you can see we're down a little bit. We've been using our reserves while we built, until we got our rates where we wanted them to be during the change. We went to a different way of how we're going to bill those. And so we need to come up a little bit to have 3 months. When I looked last, it was about 500,000 is what we need to come up. Wastewater is about the same. You can see when we quit paying our $1 million extra payment, it brought our budget down, so we don't have to have near as much reserve. So that was good for our wastewater fund. But this is not something I'm suggesting we have to have immediately. We're just going to slowly build them, and I would just like to have it as one of our best practices to have that kind of a reserve for our utility funds.
And by approving this, we're not making any changes that's going to affect our residents. This is not a drastic measure that's happening. We're going to grow those fund reserves organically.
Exactly.
Okay.
We are our rates are going up a little the next few years, but that's already pre-planned, and we're working on that, so that this isn't going to change that at all.
So you just need a motion to
Change my policy
change your policy?
for the enterprise utility funds.
I'd call for a motion, please.
I move that we accept the consideration to grow those reserve balances as you have explained. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion carries. Next, this evening, we will receive an update on the Heartland Flyer. Zach? Bueller?
How about now?
There we go.
There we go. Hey, I wanted to present before Jen because her presentation was way more uplifting than mine will be. We got the Heartland Flyer update as presented, but I thought I would start with the depot update and kind of transition into the Heartland Flyer update. I have in my homework here, I have all the deeds that have ever been issued and executed for the depot starting in 1898. And current ownership executed their deed in 1998, 100 years later. So with current ownership, they have now put it on the market. It's been available for the better part of a year. I believe all of you had the chance to go in and tour it this spring. They're still asking $1.5 million for the building, but I believe with events that have happened and just it being on the market kind of dormant for a while, that price might be a little prohibitive from potential developers or investors to come in and rehabilitate the property. A few weeks ago, or almost a month ago, I guess, the HVAC unit went out and started smoking. They thought they had an electrical fire going on, so it got real interesting around the depot for a while, but it did not burn down, and it was, again, I want to tell everybody it was just the HVAC unit. So the current realtor listing the property has been pushing for city involvement to try and purchase the property. He was going to come back with like a proposal for the city commission to review, but that proposal was really just to enter a non-binding letter of intent that didn't bind the commission to anything. But at that price, it's just real prohibitive, and staff really recommends just to kind of wait that out, monitor the property, and offer support to other potential candidates at this time. Kind of a wait and see play here. That being said, there is some good news about the depot. Amtrak did announce that they're dusting off their plans for the platform reconstruction plan that will optimistically happen in the next 12 to 18 months, but they're pushing that 18 to 24 months just to be conservative there. They would not issue the price on the cost on this project. They said they wanted to update their numbers. They were sending survey crews out, and they were out almost a week right to the day that we met, and so they're resurveying the property, and the deck construction will extend from the depot all the way out back here to City Hall. There will be some temporary parking impacts where they will take the back of City Hall to basically store and house their materials. That they'll do another housing and storage there at the depot itself, but that again, that's temporary. Some great things that will happen is that it'll all be on the inside, so it's all that concrete that's all broken up and that's going to be removed. You're going to have great ADA compliant decking all through there with three ADA access points. There will be lighting all up and down the corridor, and as we took a trip, Rich and Rod and I this summer to just ride the train and see what the experience was like and see what other stations were doing well. And one thing I can say is we don't have lighting, very good lighting there, and you're hard pressed to find even like a yellow safety line out there. So all that stuff will be updated, and at the very least.
And we paid our own way.
We paid our own way. There we go. We parked out back at the post office to walk across at 2:30 in the morning to actually have the experience to see what that's like. I mean, what is it like to leave Newton Station like everybody else? So it was a great trip and definitely eye-opening. We're definitely behind the game, but I do believe we can catch up, especially if new ownership gets in there to the depot. That would be great. So moving on from that, Amtrak platform reconstruction and on to the actual update. I reached out to KDOT for the Heartland Flyer extension update to see what they had to say, and they were like, well, no news other than I handed you this out here at the bench. This has been on their website since the summer. They had a meeting in April to basically go over this their operation service, or what are they're calling their apologies. Oh yeah, their service development plan. Apologies, service development plan, and they were going to review that in December. And they announced that it was just going to be in December. They didn't give us a date. Well, they just announced like last week, and it's actually tomorrow. So tomorrow at 1 p.m. Please tune in. Use this sheet to access. You can go onto KDOT, get the Zoom link. You can tune in. I think it's really important to hear what they have to say with the election and see what if funding will be in jeopardy or what the status is for that. But if you talk to them now, everything is cautiously optimistic, on track, and service will go along this timeline that they have established to be operational in 2029. So I would yield to any questions, but I know it's a brief update, but there's really no new news other than tomorrow we'll hopefully get a more broader update or more comprehensive update.
Denise, I believe you shared that link with the commissioners, right? Okay. Yeah, they got a link emailed.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I remember.
Commissioners, anything? Thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
Next item this evening is to consider an ordinance amending the city code related to the sale of alcoholic beverages and cereal malt beverages, CMB. Chris?
Sure. And it's just that. It's a cleanup to our city code, Chapter 4, which pertains to alcohol. As you recall, in November, there was a countywide vote regarding the food sales requirement and that ratio compared to alcohol sales. We've essentially, and obviously that passed to remove that ratio requirement. So we've gone through our city code and removed any references to the ratio in terms of any restrictions or record keeping consistent with that decision. We've provided a red line and clean version of the ordinance. We also cleaned up section 4214 to try and address the hours of sale, just putting that in a table as opposed to text. But I would stand for any questions. This is just in response to that state law or county-specific law.
5160-24. I would make that motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Hearing none, that motion carries. Next item this evening is to consider city manager and city attorney contracts. Trinice?
Good evening. Trinice Robertson, Human Resources Director. We all met in executive session in October to discuss the city manager and city attorney's employment contract annualized so that we could discuss their evaluation, their performance with the organization, address any ask to compensation or anything else significant. So I'm here this evening basically to ask for your approval. The 2025 contract presented for your approval is largely a carryover from the 2024 version. The compensation amount has been updated for the city manager's contract from grade 17 steps 4 to grade 17 step 6. Additionally, the request includes two additional weeks of vacation. The city attorney's contract that was implemented last December 2023, the compensation amount has been updated from grade 17 step 7 to grade 17 step 8. So I will stand for any questions.
Do we do them one at a time?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do we do them?
Yes, absolutely.
One at a time or combined?
I'm sorry.
Do we consider the city manager separate from the city attorney in two separate motions, or?
You can vote to approve them both.
Okay,
Okay.
very good.
I move that we approve both contracts.
I'll
I
second.
second.
Fourth.
We have a motion and some seconds, so it is that season. So any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Hearing none, those motions carry. Thank you, Trinice. Next item this evening is to review a draft interlocal agreement for the Themian Park. Chris?
Yeah, and I'm going to tee this up, and I'm going to lean on Suzanne. She's been more involved in the process, but I did put together a draft interlocal for your review based on the information that Suzanne passed along. I believe Rich was on that committee as well. Essentially, it outlines the responsibilities of the parties, the PBC, the city, the Raylor Foundation, the NRC, and the USD. There's a map outlining the master plan, but this is just a draft, and I would welcome comments. I know that, like I said, Suzanne was very involved in the process, and I did my best to kind of put it in an agreement form that we could discuss, and if there's any issues to discuss before it's formally distributed to the other parties, now would be a good opportunity to talk about them.
Remember, there's multiple parties, but the Raylor Foundation is made up of the volunteer group that is raising funds to put the improvements that are shown on the screen at Themian Park. And so that's basically how Chris has laid this out, and this would kind of be ran through the PBC because the school district, the NRC, and the city all already have a relationship through the City of Newton Public Building Commission. Chris laid out there in section 2 the duties of the city. Basically, as the group raises their funds, then they would be providing the funds to the city because it's a city park, and we would go through a process to have them designed and then built, just like we would any other city project. And we are going to have a couple of changes, I think, for sure. None of the none of the other parties have seen this. I just sent it out to the others that were on the committee before our meetings this evening. The NRC has committed to providing $100,000 towards pickleball courts out of their budget as this moves forward. And in Section 6, the duties of USD 373.
Aren't they signing that over rather than?
Yeah, we were going to have to change the language here just a little bit. I believe they're going to sign the parking lot over.
To the BBC.
Yeah, to the Public Building Commission. I believe they become the owner. I believe that's how it's going to work.
That was my understanding.
I'm not 100%, but, and then that brings up the issue, because I know there was discussions in our committee meetings, and Rich, you pipe up on this if I miss it, but the fundraising group has certain things that they want to see in phase one, but they definitely didn't want to spend their funding, especially right off the bat, on parking lot. But we did have some comments from the public meetings when we provided notice to the people around the park that live around the park, hey, here's what's being considered. And there was some comments. Remember, we had a public meeting out at the Meridian Center, and some comments were, hey, it's already kind of crazy with parking. And so the parking lot that you see in gray on the screen there, Rebecca can point to it. That's the parking lot we're talking about. Currently, that is a vacant lot that the school district owns, and that would be provided to build a parking lot. The school would provide the land, and then the parking lot would get built with the project in some phase or another. And so I don't know if we need to lay out what's going to happen in each phase or not.
Right.
I don't know.
That was kind of my question, because in those meetings, we had like the engineer swag. I wouldn't even call them an estimate. I mean, they were just some big numbers
Yeah, we
on
kind of
different
ran
phases.
fast and loose with estimates.
And what we learned in that was if we treated it as one large project, then we actually could save money versus trying to phase it out into the smaller projects, from equipment mobilization and damaging work that had already been done when you come in to do another phase and such. So I guess my question is does the language speak to what entity as a group or whatever decides what gets done when?
Obviously it's triggered on the funds being raised. And then at that point, we may need to add some specificity in terms of if there are those decisions in terms of whether it's piecemeal or
Right, because it's clear that the total amount isn't going to be raised overnight,
Right.
And the community wants, this group wants, and everybody supports that initial phase of getting the pickleball courts and the basketball courts in first,
And one way that we might be able to do that, because when we look at an estimate, there's always a % that goes towards the design. And so maybe we could also say that for whatever phase we're going to build, and if even that committee wants to decide it, or if you want all three agencies to figure it out, or even the PBC, which might be smart, that you turn it over to the governing body that you already have set up to deal with some of the recreation stuff, is that a percentage of the funds for each phase needs to be set aside for parking, so that you know there's going to be some portion of parking that's going to be addressed. I don't know. I'm spitballing that one.
Yeah, and it's like everything else. There's a whole lot of different opinions on what's parking. Is it a dirt lot that you get rolled ankles in, or is it something that's paved and improved,
And the school district also has agreed that the parking lots to the south of the proposed new parking lot, that they would allow that parking for, any events that are occurring at that's after school hours. There was also, in the agreement, it also talks about naming rights, and we've basically saying that this project would fall under your naming policy that the city commission has in place. So if there's donations of certain types, it would fall under that policy. Also, we did talk about things that the city would provide. And the two things that I would speak to is, you can see there next to the pickleball courts, there's a little red rectangle, and that would be kind of a restroom with a little bit of storage area. There's no restrooms there today. And sewer is in the alley to the east. And sanitary sewer would get extended over to the restrooms. And we said that the city would fund that sewer extension. And then the pad that needs to be built for that restroom, that we would do that with city forces. This is very similar to what we did for that restroom building that's at Centennial Park on the south end. It's the same kind of prep because we were looking at a pre-made facility, pre-made building that would come in with restrooms.
The city, the group has done a lot of work to try and respond to that public meeting that we had. So you'll notice through the park, instead of having the hard diagonal connector from the northwest to the southeast corners of that park, you now have the winding routes and everything because people liked to walk through the park and everything. So that's a way to keep that aspect of the park going. And then the parking lot alleviates the neighborhood concerns of all the additional street parking that was happening in the neighborhood during those games. And then, of course, the lighting on the pickleball courts, tennis court, basketball courts, but not on the ball fields or the soccer fields, you know, and that so minimizes light pollution because the neighbors that are adjacent to those are businesses or just a road, not residential.
And the park would still be utilized for the PE classes there at the junior high because the school would still be a major user. And so, you know, basketball courts and pickleball courts during school time might be heavily used by those PE classes. And so we looked at, you know, some timing that it would be open for public use, and we'd maybe put up some signage to that effect. But the maintenance of the facilities once they are constructed would be the responsibility of the NRC. I think the only question would be make sure that you're okay with what I've suggested the city would pay for, which would be, and I need to make sure, I think that's exactly what it says in here, is for us to fund the pad for the,
Like those in-kind things that we can do with existing staff and resources.
D and F in section 2.
sewer line, yeah, and yes.
And then we would explore the idea of the order and maybe get some more detail on that.
And let us look at, maybe we can talk with our partners, maybe we need to actually bring this to the PBC as well and talk about the order of phasing.
And we would anticipate edits. This hasn't been, you know, vetted by all the partners yet, so.
And we'll definitely change that section 6, because I did have a comment from the superintendent of schools. He said, hey, I don't think this is exactly what we said. So what I've reported to you this evening is how we would change that.
Cool.
I mean, do you have any other comments, changes, additions, anything? Advice?
There's a lot of hands in the pot, and I just want to say thank you, Chris.
No worries.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Just to clarify, the park will be paid for by the NRC, maintained by the NRC, but we're insuring the park, right?
Correct.
It would be maintained by the NRC per the agreement. We would insure it because it's still a
City park.
city-owned asset.
Okay.
I think Donna would,
Well, if it's PBC owned,
I
then
think it's just city.
PBC will.
okay, or is it just going to be?
Yeah, well, the
Yeah,
owning entity would insure it.
and we did say that would change some of that on the parking. It says something about the parking being insured by the USD 373. That would change too if the PBC owns the parking lot.
Are we going to have to redo the whole interlocal agreement with the PBC once it's all done? Or?
We're hoping not. We're hoping to address it here, but I mean, if we have to bring that back, that'll be it.
So this would kind of be a side.
Yeah,
Agreement.
I liked how you said that on there, that you wanted to do this as a side agreement.
Which I assume means, Chris, and maybe help us understand this part, that means the funding that's set aside for all of the other fields with the PBC, it would remain with just those facilities, not with this facility. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, good.
And so maybe we need to call out, there was some discussion in our small group meeting that this fundraising group would continue to raise funds even after all the improvements were built that would help with maintenance when you had to replace it. I mean, we're looking, 10 years down the road because they're looking at turf on the soccer field. And so that turf would need to be replaced, just like we replaced the turf at Fisher Field.
And these are pre-stressed courts or whatever so that they don't fall apart. It's not, a backyard 4-inch slab.
Yeah.
Right. For the
Got
pickleball and the
through 'em.
basketball, you need to do some post-tensioning on those courts so that they don't fall apart. So it's not just like sidewalk pavement.
Will they be putting restrooms out there?
Yeah, that's the little red dot that I was talking about. That would be a restroom facility. And the city would build the pad for the restroom facility. And then the shelter, we were looking at, I think it was a 20 by 20 shelter. It would be open air shelter, kind of like we have at the dog park, those open air shelters for people to be able to use.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you, Suzanne. So, no action, right?
That's good. No action. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, the next item this evening is Citizens Forum, and there are no signups. So with that, I believe we have a couple of executive sessions. You want to do the real estate one
Right.
first?
We might do the real estate one, and we would anticipate possible action after the real estate.
How long do you need, sir?
I think 15 minutes. Why don't we call it 8:15?
8:15. Call for a motion.
You want me to read the motion?
Sure.
Okay, I move that the city commission recess into executive session to discuss the acquisition of real estate located within the city. The justification for closing the meeting is to conduct preliminary discussions regarding the acquisition of real property. The time and place at which the open meeting shall resume is 8:15.
Yep.
Right here in city commission chambers.
We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. It is now time. We have returned from our executive session where no action was taken, but I do believe we are going to conduct some business yet this evening.
Right, and I would ask for a motion to take up a new item of business, which would be to consider a resolution which authorizes city staff to participate in a tax foreclosure auction. I've provided a copy of the resolution to those in attendance. We'll surely get it online so people can see it, but essentially what it does is it provides city administrative staff to bid on a specific property which is outlined in the resolution at Thursday's tax foreclosure auction. And it sets forth the maximum bid, which correlates with the specific statute, KSA 79-2804I, which gives specific authority to cities to bid on those properties, and it outlines that essentially the city is not going to be responsible for the specials, but is going to be responsible for the back due taxes on this property. I would stand for any questions. The resolution will be uploaded to the packet, and I would ask for a motion first to take this up as a new business item, and then a motion to approve the resolution.
I move that we take this up as a new business item.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
G.
Number, that would be G-1351.
I move we approve resolution number G-1351.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Anything else on that, Chris? All right.
No, sir.
Next item this evening is another executive session. We do not anticipate on taking any activity in that session or returning afterwards. We will adjourn. I call for this motion.
Time.
How long do you need?
I think we're saying 8:30. Is that right, Daniela? 8:30.
Okay, I move that the city commission recess into executive session to discuss a personnel matter. The justification for closing the meeting is to discuss personnel matters involving non-elected personnel. The time and place at which the open meeting shall resume is 8:30 p.m. right here in commission chambers.
We have that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. We have returned from our executive session. No action was taken. I will go around the horn if anybody has anything.
I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
Commissioners?
Nope.
We are adjourned.
It's fuzzy.